Oh shit, here we go again.
Hey autists, Fat Autistic Kid here. Welcome to a new series called A Fat Autistic Retrospect, where I pondered towards media that I have experienced as a child in a cynical yet critical way. Today, we will ponder towards a sequel to a game made in 1995, which received high critical acclaim. That game is Yoshi's New Island, which should also be called Yoshi's Island 2 Electric Boogaloo. It was 2014, another morning ready to go to my primary school. I was always a fan of Yoshi. I don't know why, but I always felt something special towards him. However, I never got the opportunity to play the original, but when the advertisement for Yoshi's New Island was playing on my TV, my innocent brain was excited to finally get an opportunity to play this game. During my weekend, we went to game, bought it, and when I got home, I immediately went on to my 2DS and booted the game up. After I fully completed it, I was satisfied with the game and I still played it. However, after I fully completed the game twice, I stopped playing it and it was left on my shelf, collecting dust.
You let dust build up, and before you know it, you've got an army of dust bunnies plotting to take over.
For many years, until I discovered it again, pondering about my fuzzy memories and wondering if it was actually a good game. Now looking back at this game, with higher standards and being able to play the original, this game is straight up disappointing, and here are the reasons why. The game's story doesn't justify the reason why there should be a sequel in the first place. If anything, the story feels like a repackaged version of the original, except it was tweaked a little bit just to turn it into a sequel. The story doesn't feel like it came from a genuine idea that could switch up the Yoshi's Island formula, but rather, it's a story that came out of desperation and corporate greed in order to rush a game to make as much money as possible from a new generation who has no idea about the original game. Nothing new is learned, the only difference being is a little subversion when the stork delivers the babies to the wrong house. You know, at least if they added new themes and elements that shook up the formula and made it fresh, I would be a little more content with the game. I'm not expecting the best writing out of a sequel, especially how the first game had a very simplistic story. But at least if they made a more developed story that was a continuation of the first story's themes, at least the game would have been more interesting than going the lazy route and basically just cloning the story with a sequel fashion. Actually, this might be a good start to an episode 1 of Fat Autistic Rewrite, so if you want to see my perception of a Yoshi's Island sequel, then make sure you stick around to see that. The gameplay is probably the best aspect of this game. Many of the core elements of a Yoshi game still remains here, and while the level design doesn't live up to the original where there are moments where I need to actually think, at least it's decent and I can say that it's quite fun to play. Also, some of the new implementations such as egg dozers are actually pretty cool. However, here's the real problem with the gameplay. It's the same as the original. Some of those new implementations I've mentioned barely show up and enhance the gameplay, and it feels like they never tried to experiment with new features that could differentiate this game from the original. After I stopped playing the game, I always had thoughts of the game, but only the cover art, which actually looks pretty good. However, I didn't realize how bad it was until I looked back at gameplay videos about the game itself, and I am not a fan of it at all. Unlike the original game, which represented a ready springboard to jump from 2D to 3D graphics, New Island doesn't really elaborate on the new technologies to show off its visuals, but rather to emulate the original but slap the title of a sequel to give off the illusion that it's new. In the original game, most of the music was very memorable, catchy, and it wasn't a pain for the ears to listen to. However, in Yoshi's New Island, barely any of the music is catchy, and even the catchy ones are painful to listen to, due to the ideology of using kids' toys for the instruments of this game, which if they sounded nice and actually wasn't painful to listen to, it could have actually helped bring the immersion much more higher than it could have ever reached. However, like I said, as they're painful to listen to, And unless we're talking about a cover version of these songs which actually would sound better, then I'm not really going to listen to them in a soundtrack on my playlist, probably somewhere on YouTube. Apart from a neat little Easter egg at the end, this ending felt soulless, predictable, and shallow. Despite my nostalgia for the game, whenever I look at the ending, I don't feel happy that my journey ended. Instead, I can only see the palpitating dollar signs Nintendo had in their eyes to the thought of mimicking the success of the original Island game in order to cash in from nostalgia and bringing the Yoshi character towards the new generation, but then failing miserably. In conclusion, Yoshi's New Island feels more like a corporate recreation of Yoshi's Island instead of a genuine story that continued and expanded the themes of the original. I know that people will probably tell me something along the lines of, "Hey, you're taking a Yoshi game seriously. This was made for the new generation of children, not for older fans." But why can't I take a character like Yoshi that's beloved by many seriously and want more out of him? Also, here's a question for anyone who works for Nintendo, if there is any slim chance that any of them are seeing this video. Here's a question for you all. If you're trying to recreate a game for the newer generation, yet despite that, the new generation grows up and calls the original superior, did you really achieve anything other than repackage a game in a worse way? Anyways, thank you for watching this episode 1 of a Fat Autistic Retrospect. Now, while this game was certainly disappointing to look at in retrospect, another game which I also perceive to be bad, yet still have some form of new enjoyment through ironic pleasures, would be Minecraft Story Mode. You better be ready for this one, folks, as I'm about to tear this to shreds. See, even if I think Yoshi's New Island is a lot better than Minecraft Story Mode, at least I could say that Minecraft Story Mode is going to be a lot more fun to tackle, rather than this wasted potential that is called a sequel.
I'll tell you the problem with the scientific power that you're using here. It didn't require any discipline to attain it. You know, you read what others had done, and you took the next step. You didn't earn the knowledge for yourselves, so you don't take any responsibility for it. You stood on the shoulders of geniuses to accomplish something as fast as you could, and before you even knew what you had, you patented it and packaged it and slapped it on a plastic lunchbox, and now you're selling it. You want to sell it. Well,
I don't think you're giving us our due credit. Our scientists have done things which nobody's ever done before.
yeah, but your scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not they didn't stop to think if they should.